Hi everybody, it is You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions. And this week, my first question comes from Mark Aranges, who says, let's pretend that superheroes aren't a thing as a genre of fiction. You start hearing in the news that in New York there is a man who is apparently beating criminals and sabotaging corrupt politicians' careers up, and there are strong indications he is directly involved in unearthing several corporate scandals and bringing illegal activities to light. According to witnesses, he even dresses as a bat. How would you react to these events? Would you consider this guy, this Batman, to be a criminal, a terrorist even? Someone who we as a society should not support or condone? Or would you actually feel glad that someone was doing something about the corruption and crime, even if working outside of the law? This is such a great question because it brings to light something that I think is so interesting about Batman as a character, which is I don't think what Batman does is all that good. Like, I can enjoy Batman as an adventure character, as a detective character. I think Batman is awesome and cool and fascinating, and I love to, read or watch a great Batman story. He's one of my favorite characters ever in any genre of anything. But, I mean, if we're going to treat Batman as a real person, what he does just is not acceptable at all. He should not be doing what he is doing. It's not his place. It's not really his right to do these things. What he's doing is criminal, and in any kind of civil society, the kind of things that Batman does should not and cannot be tolerated. No lawful society could allow a Batman to operate unopposed. But then again, it's not that simple either. Because in the scenario you propose in your question mark, this Batman guy is, exposing corruption and taking down bad actors. I mean, he's doing good things even though he's working outside of the law. And are we really willing to give up all the good things he's doing just because he's not obeying the law, just because he's using vigilante justice to do things that are ultimately for the greater good? So it's a complicated issue. But it comes down to me to, do we as a society allow individuals who happen to have the means, in Batman's case, the money and the intelligence and the physical training to do these sorts of things? Do we allow them to do this, to take the law into their own hands simply because they feel motivated to do so and they happen to have the means to do so? I think the answer has to be no. We can't let them do it. They cannot be allowed to do it. Vigilante justice cannot be allowed to operate, even if it happens to be targeted at people that we think deserve it. Pokemaster4555. Hey Steve, I saw an article the other day that confused me somewhat. The gist of it was something along the lines of gun control doesn't mean what you think it means. If it happens, the government will take everyone's guns, we'll be left defenseless, etc. Before this, I sort of thought that gun nuts didn't want gun control because they like getting their guns easier. I never at all imagined that they thought their guns were going to be taken. Do pro-gun owners really think their guns will be taken? Is that even on the table for gun control measures? There are definitely gun owners who do believe that. Now, maybe I'm being optimistic, maybe I'm being naive, but I don't think very many gun owners seriously believe that. But the gun lobby in this country, the NRA, the Gun Owners of America, they will use that fear to push their agenda. They will press on that paranoia, that insecurity, that, gun control means the government is going to take your guns. And they will use that to block efforts to reform gun laws, to implement tougher gun legislation. They will say, this is just the first step. If you have to register your guns, then eventually it's all leading to the government coming to confiscate your guns. They definitely play on that fear. But as to how many gun owners in America seriously believe that, I don't know. Hopefully it's not that many, because, to get to the second part of your question, it is not a rational fear. It's not even talked about seriously. So the fear that, new gun laws is going to result in the government taking your guns, it's completely irrational. It's not on the table. Red Rob. How would you write a character representing someone like, say, Fred Phelps in order to make them morally gray? One of the easiest ways to do that, and I think I've mentioned this in an answer to a question in this series before, but it feels like it's been a while, is to humanize the character. If you want to write a character based on someone like Fred Phelps, a religious zealot, a very bitter, bigoted man, a dogmatic, absolutist thinker who rejects science, modern science, and rejects things like civil rights and equality for LGBT people and women and different members of different racial classes. If you want to humanize that guy, if you want to make that guy a gray character instead of just a flat-out loathsome villain, one good way to do that is to humanize him. And you can humanize him by showing him display tenderness toward his family. Maybe when he gets up in the pulpit or when he gets on TV, he blasts nothing but hatred and bile. But when he's in private with his family, he's a very gentle husband and father. Maybe there's some shortcoming in his personal life. My wife and I have just been watching The X-Files on Netflix. And a few weeks ago, we got to the episode that sort of delves into the backstory of the smoking man. And one of the big revelations in that episode is that he's a frustrated writer. This guy who's sort of the personification of corruption and evil on the show, who is constantly, moving these dark forces into motion to thwart the efforts of Agent Mulder and Agent Scully. And it turns out that he's not pure evil at all, that actually a lot of what he does is driven by personal frustration and by the fact that he feels like he has no other choice but to do what he does, because what he really wanted to do with his life was to be a writer. And he couldn't do it. He was a failure at what he really wanted to do. And that humanizes him. It doesn't make him a good person, but it makes him a complex person. It makes him more dimensional than just, the creepy guy in the shadows who smokes the cigarettes. So something like that, I think, would work. Zooble Sticks. Steve, a writing question. In an interview for the extras on the Usual Suspects DVD, Gabriel Byrne said that no matter how much they want to tell themselves that they can portray any person, all actors are, by natural human limitations, bound to always play a variation of themselves, as filtered or modified through or by their character. First of all, do you agree with that line of thinking? Secondly, when writing, has it occurred to you that your characters, in one way or another, have something of you in them? Yes, including Toby Benson. Or, at the very least, that you are limited in your understanding of your very own characters, in the same way that we are all limited in our understanding of the real people we have around us. Lastly, how's my punctuation? Well, your punctuation is fine, if you were feeling insecure about it. I think your punctuation is fine. I agree with what Gabriel Byrne says there. I do think that actors are limited by their true selves, by who they actually are. I don't think that it's really true to say that an actor can play any role, or could play any role well, could do justice to any role. And I think sometimes when we talk about what makes a good actor, we kind of overvalue that ability to play a diverse range of characters. I mean, there are some actors, brilliant actors, deservedly renowned actors, who can play a vast array of very different characters, who are chameleons. But there are also actors who generally play the same type of character, have a much narrower range, and yet are just as brilliant to me as the more versatile actors. I mean, to me, there has rarely, if ever, been an actor in sound pictures to compare to Robert Mitchum. I mean, Robert Mitchum, to me, is one of the greatest actors who ever appeared on screen. And his roles are generally within a fairly narrow range. I mean, it's not that he wasn't versatile, but he generally played within a narrow range. But the key is, he always felt genuine and he always felt real. And I value that a lot more than versatility. I tend to value authenticity. And when writing, has it occurred to me that my characters have something of me in them? Yeah, all of them do. They all do. Stuffy is the best case scenario for me. Stuffy is me with all the bad stuff sort of screened out. Toby Benson has a lot of me in him. I mean, Toby Benson is sort of like the id unleashed. Toby Benson is every sort of selfish impulse that I might have indulged. But at the same time, I mean, he's not pure evil. He's not like a bad person. He's just very selfish and very impulsive. The version of me that I play in the Stephen Stuffy videos is much the same way. It's me, the negative parts of me, the insensitive, impulsive, reckless, ignorant parts of me kind of turned way up, and all the more reasonable parts are turned down. So yeah, all the characters do. And I think you make an interesting observation that my understanding of them is limited. I think that's true. I think, especially for Stuffy and for Toby Benson, and I think probably for Jack at this point too, they've become developed enough, at least in my head, if not always in the videos. They've become developed enough that sometimes they're able to surprise me. It's not that I know every single thing that they would do in a given situation. It's not like I can very quickly think, oh, okay, what would Toby Benson do in this situation? But if I write him in that situation and I write him as doing a particular thing, he might not do the most obvious thing, but I can think, oh, but that is something that Toby would do. You know what I mean? So they do have the capability to surprise me, and they do have the capability to sort of live and breathe on their own, in a sense. JJ talks, how do I tell Tofu no? Did Audie ever go through a rebellious phase, showing up with her motorcycle, tabby friend 3 hours past curfew? I can't handle this responsibility. Audie went through a rebellious phase before we got her spayed. I think when we got her fixed, she kind of settled down for the most part. But when we first had her, the first year or two, before we got her fixed, she would jump up on things. She would knock shit off of shelves. I think we went through a period where we kept her out of the bedroom because she would always jump up on shit and just knock things off on the floor just to do it. It used to be a running joke that she was conducting gravity experiments. I would say that she would knock stuff off because she would knock it off and then she would look at it on the floor like she was studying it. And she hasn't done that for a while. So I don't know. I mean, Tofu is still really little and still really young. So Tofu will probably grow out of that, I hope, for your sake. But it's just time and maturity, and I think that phase will probably pass. You know, that's what happened with Audie. I mean, she's still very active and very playful, you know, but she doesn't do that kind of mischievous stuff very much anymore. Sire A No. Hey Steve, what do you think it is that the mass killings in this country are carried out with a firearm? While I'm not going to list any examples, there are many other ways you can kill a group of people quickly, efficiently, and cheaper than guns. Yet it seems to always be a guy with guns. What do you think the fascination with guns is? What in our culture makes people think guns are the ultimate problem solver? In addition to stricter gun laws and other legislative maneuvers, I believe we as a country need to look at also the psychological and socioeconomic reasons on why this violence is continually carried out with a gun. What say you? I think you are absolutely right. I do think it's deeper than just a legal problem. I do think we need to have a cultural change. We need to stop worshiping guns. We need to stop fetishizing guns and gun ownership. I think it's rooted in our history. I think maybe it goes back to the romanticized image of the Minuteman. I mean, we have written into our national mythology the idea that common people picked up their guns and defeated the British Empire. And that is a very simplified version of what happened, but that is certainly part of what happened. And we are very closely tied to the idea of firearm ownership. I mean, Christ, owning guns is the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights. We take it for granted because it's the way it's always been, because all of us have spent our entire lives with that being in our Constitution. But just think about that. The Second Amendment of the Constitution is you can own guns. And it makes it feel much deeper and much more important than it actually is. There's really nothing innately beautiful and liberating about that. We've blown it up into this wonderful, magical thing like, ooh, gun ownership. It's the symbol of our liberty. But really, we don't treat any other kind of weapon that way. I mean, you mentioned there are other ways. If you want to kill a bunch of people at once, there are other ways of doing it. I thought the other day, imagine if instead of mass shootings in the United States, or maybe never mind mass shootings, just gun deaths in general, total gun deaths. Imagine if instead of guns it was bombs. Imagine if 30,000 people a year died from bomb-related causes in the United States, which is how many people die in total every year from gun-related causes. 30,000 people on average. If it was bombs, would anybody be saying the bombs didn't have something to do with it? Would anybody be reaching for excuses, for explanations that didn't have anything to do with bombs, the way people do with guns? Would anybody say bombs don't blow people up, people blow people up? I don't think we would react this way to any other cause of death. We would be quick to regulate it. We would say, wait a minute, obviously there's a problem. Obviously we can't have this many people owning bombs. We need to do something about this. There are 300 million privately owned bombs in this country. There are 80 million people living in this country who have privately owned bombs. This is unacceptable. I'm pretty sure that's what most of us would say. And yet when you switch bombs with guns, it's suddenly an incredibly controversial subject. It's an intractable political dilemma. And I think it's because guns are just written into our national origin story. We romanticize them and we glorify them like we do no other form of weapon. And that really sucks because it makes it really difficult to solve what to me is one of the most shameful problems in our country, which is the gun problem. Joseph Opiano, hey Steve, what's your opinion of the original King Kong? I thought the special effects were impressive for their time, but the writing was awful. Oh, and it was fucking racist as fuck. Would you agree? Oh yeah. It was, it's quite racist. It's not that much of a stretch to interpret the racial overtones of the original King Kong and, the panic of that the Kong character creates and the image of Kong fixating on the white blonde woman. There's a lot of sort of race panic stuff that is not so subtly written into King Kong. But yeah, special effects are amazing. Even to this day, I'm impressed by the stop motion. And also, it's not just impressive on a technical level, it's cool to see the little quirks in it, like how Kong's fur will move from frame to frame, which indicates where the fingers were of the people when they were moving the model. That's just little things like that that make me smile, that I enjoy. Yeah, technically speaking, it's still a tremendous film and a very important film, and it's a very enjoyable film. But yeah, the racist stuff is definitely there. And in terms of just a piece of drama, a piece of writing, it's claptrap. It's the main reason to see the movie is to see Kong, to see the special effects, and to just see it as a piece of cinema history. And as that, I think it's tremendously satisfying. But yeah, not super well written, not distinguished by its script, and yeah, pretty racist. Joe McClory, hey Steve, how important is intent for you? I mean, generally, would you rather people do an action you approve of for a reason you find deplorable, or that they do an action you find harmful for reasons you find reasonable and or honorable? Intent is important, but intent isn't the only thing that matters. I think a lot of people think it has to be 100% or 0%. And I think it depends on the context. There are certain actions, obviously, where the intent of the person doing it is very important. You know, if you accidentally run somebody over with your car, you're going to be treated very differently in the legal system than if you intentionally ran somebody over with your car. So there are distinctions based on intent that I think that we make all the time and that I think are appropriate. But as for the specific question you asked, would I rather people do something that I approve of for a reason that I don't approve of, or would I rather them do something I don't approve of for a reason I do approve of? That's easy. I would much rather people do the good thing for the bad reason. And again, people do that all the time. I mean, look at people who act charitably because they feel called to do so by their religious beliefs. Now, I don't think there's any such thing as a true religion. I'm an atheist. I don't think that religious motivations are noble or are true or are based in fact. But if a religious person acts in a noble, charitable, humane way for what they believe is a religious motivation, I'm much more concerned about the good that they're doing. I'm not going to shame someone or argue with someone or make an enemy of someone who is doing a good thing for what I consider to be a bad reason or an illegitimate reason. The most important thing to me is that they're doing something good. In that sense, I don't think intention matters very much at all. There are situations where intent makes a big difference. But in general, I care more about results than I care about intention. Like, I mean, what's the intention of the thunder? Does it mean to be the signifier that this segment is over, or is it just a coincidence? I don't care. I don't worry about what the intentions of the thunderclap are. All I know is that it means that this segment is over and it's time for
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
Liam Darcy, if Trump becomes president, do you think the U.S. will turn into alternate 1985 from Back to the Future 2? And if that happens, would it be worth it if we all get hoverboards? I mean, you could forgive a lot of shit for hoverboards. That'd be pretty cool. But let's not forget that in Back to the Future 2, Biff was only in charge of Hill Valley. Trump would be in charge of the whole country. So I think it would actually be way worse than Back to the Future 2's alternate 1985. Megan Rivera, who are your favorite YouTube feminists? Oh, there are so many. Actually, I had a list of about 30 or 35 YouTube atheists who I considered to be positive or acceptable from a feminist perspective at the end of my video, Why YouTube Atheism Needs Feminism. And not all of those were like outspoken feminists, but quite a few of them were. So I would recommend you check out that list if you want a nice long list. But just off the top of my head, I mean, I love Foxy Jezebel. I love Tori the Queer. Christy Winters is one of my favorites and a friend of mine who I've gotten to know through YouTube. She's amazing. Lacey Green is pretty good. Kat Black is awesome. There are quite a few really awesome feminists on YouTube that I admire and I enjoy, many of whom are also happen to be atheists, which is cool. Lucas Hackett, One Angry Brony. Steve, which of these do you prefer and why? The Big Mac from McDonald's, the Whopper from Burger King, or a Baconator from Wendy's? Ooh, damn. See, if it was between the Big Mac and the Whopper, I'd go with the Whopper, and it's probably just that when I was a kid, there wasn't a Burger King as close as there was a McDonald's, so I didn't get a Whopper as often, so it was kind of a special thing, so I still associate a Whopper with like something special, like a treat. But if you're going to throw the Baconator in there, I mean, who could resist that? I'd probably have to say the Baconator. Yeah, and it's the bacon that does it. It's the bacon that puts it over the top. Billy Bob 313, what's your opinion about the series Big Bang Theory? Do you consider it to be a hipster thing? I find it very funny, but laugh tracks is the worst thing ever. I've actually never watched a full episode of it. In fact, I think the only pieces of it that I've ever seen are years ago on YouTube. I watched a couple of clips of it. It was a clip that Brent Spiner was in. He was like, I guess, did a cameo in an episode. And then there was another one where Will Wheaton was in it, and it might have been the same episode actually. They might have both starred in the same episode. But those are the only, and I don't even remember those clips other than I just happened to, I watched them because I guess I was in kind of a Star Trek phase, and I saw them and I checked them out. But no, I've never watched the show in a full episode, so I really don't know. But I agree with you, laugh tracks are kind of over, very dated. I would not do a laugh track if I were doing a comedy series. Drew White, do you have a favorite Muppet performer? I know most people like Jim Henson or Frank Oz, who are both great, but for me it's a toss-up between Jerry Nelson, who originated Floyd the Count Robin et al., and Richard Hunt, who originated Scooter Sweetums Beaker et al. I would have to say Frank Oz. I mean, it's not a very creative choice, but I love Frank Oz. I think he was a fantastic performer, a great puppeteer, and a great actor. But if I want to go beyond that, I think Eric Jacobson, who is one of the current performers, who actually inherited many of Frank Oz's characters, including Miss Piggy and Fozzie. He's fantastic. And my wife would be very upset with me, I think, if I didn't also mention Bill Beretta, who performs Bobo the Bear, who is a favorite of both of ours and a highlight of the new Muppet show that's on ABC right now. So I would add him to the list as well. Puppy Burns, why is feminism a cult akin to religion? It's not. I think people think that because either they desire to discredit feminism and spread misinformation about it, or they get their information about feminism from such people. But no, feminism is in no way a cult or a religion. Wig Moose, movie question. In your opinion, is Alien horror or sci-fi? Alien is a horror movie set in a sci-fi setting. That is what I say about Alien. I actually have a bit more to say about Alien, but I'll mention that in another minute or two. Jesus saved my life. I love Mexicans. Serious question. Do you think Americans ready as a people to be accepting of a non-religious Middle Eastern or Muslim Middle Eastern president? Or do you think the America would flip their shit pancake style? Thanks. P.S. Would you feel okay with a Muslim president? I think if the right candidate came along, if the right candidate was there and was impressive enough, was charismatic enough and charming enough, I could see America electing or at least seriously supporting a Middle Eastern American candidate for president. I don't think it's as unthinkable as it would have been a few years ago. I wouldn't expect it to happen anytime real soon, but if the right candidate comes along, I mean, I never would have expected that we would elect the first black president in 2008, but then along came Barack Obama, and he was a candidate that we couldn't say no to, and I was thrilled that we took that leap. So who knows? If someone else comes along who happens to be of Middle Eastern ancestry and they're a great candidate, I think that could easily happen. And yes, I would completely feel okay with a Muslim president. I have gotten by this long with nothing but Christian presidents. They seem to do okay if they are competent, if they're intelligent, if they're suited to the job. They certainly don't seem to be any better or worse based solely on their Christianity. So I would be perfectly fine with a Muslim president. Why wouldn't I be? Hey, that's it for the questions. I'm about to wrap this fucker up for another week, but before I do, I want to give you guys a shout out. I want to give a shout out to another great YouTube channel. This week, the shout out goes to TheSkepticFeminist. This is a channel run by, according to their own description page, a group of radical feminist firebrand atheists. Now, how are you going to beat that? The Skeptic Feminist is a great channel to go to see both original stuff and to see collected material from a huge, wide array of other YouTubers who talk about these issues, some of whom are very famous that you will know, some of whom probably are of a lower profile that you might just be discovering for the first time. So check out the Skeptic Feminist channel. It is absolutely awesome, and it's still relatively young, relatively small, growing. I would love to see it take off. I would love to see it boom and have a major jump in subscribers. So check out The Skeptic Feminist. I highly recommend it. Also, as I always do, I want to recommend that you check out the Lemme Listen podcasts. These are the creation of the great Jason Harding, the creator also of Opinionville here on YouTube. There are 3 Lemme Listen podcasts. There's Lemme Finish, which he does with Finite Atticus. There is American Monsters and How to Destroy Them, the hilarious improv comedy podcast about cryptozoology that is sort of coast-to-coast AM mixed with Twin Peaks. It's hilarious. I could not recommend that highly enough. And there is also Late Seating, which is the movie review podcast that Jason does with me. Every 2 weeks, we put up a new episode where we talk about a classic film, an important film. We give it a fresh look, a fresh summary. We offer our opinion on it. We tell you whether we think it deserves to be a classic or whether we think it's overrated and it has been unjustly celebrated by film lovers and film historians. The new episode goes up a little bit later today, the same day that this video goes live for the first time, and it deals with a movie that just so happened to be the subject of an earlier question in this video, which is that classic sci-fi horror film, Alien. That's right. It's October. We're doing horror movies to coincide with Halloween, and the first one we're doing is Alien, the classic Ridley Scott sci-fi horror film. So check out our Late Seating review of Alien. Check out all of our past episodes. It's such a fun show to do. You can listen to all the episodes of Late Seating and all the episodes of Lemme Finish and American Monsters at www.lemmelistenpodcasts.com. Check out those podcasts. Well, that's it for me, everybody. I'm out of here. Please, as always, leave a comment on this video asking me your question for next time. You can ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can in the next video. So until then, thanks for watching and take care, everybody.